I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to snoop. I trusted Sophia. That was the foundation of our marriage, trust. Or at least that's what I told myself. Started small. Late nights at the computer, headset on, whispering in that soft, honeyed voice she used to save just for me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, roll over, and see the dim glow of the monitor casting shadows across her face. She'd bite her lip, let out a little laugh, and murmur something like, "You're impossible." Or, "I can't believe you just said that." I wanted to believe it was innocent. See, Sophia had gotten into online gaming a few months ago, one of those MMORPGs where people build little digital lives together. I didn't mind at first. It was her escape from the stress of work, just like how I had my football nights with the guys. But the shift was undeniable. What started as a casual hobby turned into something more. She played every night. The moment dinner was done, she'd hurry upstairs to her gaming setup, leaving me alone with the dishes. Sometimes I'd catch her smiling at her phone, a private little smirk that used to be reserved for our inside jokes. Still, I ignored it. Then, last Wednesday, everything changed. I had woken up thirsty around 2 a.m. Heading downstairs for water, I heard her voice drifting from her office. Soft, intimate. I crept closer. "You always know exactly what to say to make me blush." Pause. A soft giggle. My stomach twisted. "No, of course not. Ben's asleep. He never listens in." My fingers curled around the doorframe. My name. She was talking about me. I should have barged in right then and there. But something held me back. Instead, I turned and walked away, my pulse pounding in my ears. I barely slept. The next day, I watched her closer. She was distracted at breakfast, barely looking at me, her fingers flying over her phone screen. When she left for work, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into her computer. She never logged out of anything. Her Discord was open, and right there, at the top of her messages, was a conversation with someone named Rogue Knight 99. The most recent message? "Wish I could fall asleep in your arms tonight." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. What the hell was I looking at? I sat there, staring at the message, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. "Wish I could fall asleep in your arms tonight." Sophia had typed those words. My wife. The woman I'd spent the last 7 years building a life with. The same woman who kissed me goodbye that morning like everything was normal. I felt like I was going to be sick. My hands hovered over the keyboard. My heart was a war drum in my chest. I didn't want to click, didn't want to see more. But I had to. I scrolled up. Their conversation was pages long. Inside jokes, flirty teasing, late-night confessions. "I think about you all the time. You make me feel things I haven't felt in years. Ben and we're more like roommates now." That one hit me like a gut punch. I leaned back, sucking in a sharp breath. Roommates? That's what she thought we were? Meanwhile, I was over here thinking we were solid. Maybe not perfect, but solid. And then there it was. A screenshot. It was from the game she played, one of those fantasy worlds with knights, magic, and guilds. The image showed her character and his standing close, looking out over a digital sunset. But it wasn't just the image. It was the caption. "One day this will be real." I slammed the laptop shut so hard it nearly cracked. This wasn't just gaming. This wasn't just harmless flirting. This was an affair. I spent the rest of the day walking around in a daze, waiting for her to come home. I kept playing the conversation over in my head, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just some dumb fantasy game nonsense. Maybe she'd laugh it off, say it was nothing. But then I remembered the way she whispered at night, the way she grinned at her phone like a love-struck teenager. No, this was something. I wasn't about to let it slide. When she walked through the door that evening, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of me. She barely noticed. "Hey," she said distractedly, setting her purse down. "Long day. I need to hop on for a raid soon." That set me off. "Yeah?" With Rogue Knight 99. Her entire body froze. Slowly, she turned to look at me, her eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. "What What are you talking about? I tapped the laptop. I saw your messages, Sophia. The late-night whispers, I think about you all the time garbage. The roommate's comment? Seriously. Her face drained of color. Ben, it's not what you think. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, it's exactly what I think. You're in love with some dude from a video game. You've been sneaking around behind my back, pouring your heart out to a screen name. Do you even hear how ridiculous that is? She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. She hesitated, like she was trying to find the right words. It's just an escape, that's all. He listens to me. He understands me in ways that maybe you don't. That stung. I stood up, shoving the chair back. So instead of talking to me, you run to some random dude on the internet? Sophia's lip trembled, and for a second, I thought she might cry. It was never supposed to be real, Ben. It's just talking. I scoffed. Talking, right? You're just talking about falling asleep in his arms. Just talking about a future with him. What happens when the talking isn't enough? What happens when you want more? She looked away. That silence told me everything. I grabbed the laptop and spun it toward her. Who is he, Sophia? She shook her head. I don't know. I blinked. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, I don't really know him, she said quietly. I know his voice. I know what he tells me, but we've never met in person. I frowned. Something about the way she said it. Have you seen him? Another pause. He doesn't like video calls. My stomach twisted. Does he have social media? She hesitated.
No. Ist here.
Let me get this straight. You've been spilling your soul to a guy you've never seen, who refuses to video chat, who has no social media. She flinched like she hadn't realized how insane it sounded until I said it out loud. I sat back down, suddenly feeling very different about this whole thing. Sophia, you're being played. Her eyes flashed with anger. That's not true. He's real. He what? Loves you? Wants to build a future with you. I folded my arms. If this dude actually cared, he'd show you who he was. Sophia shook her head furiously, but doubt flickered across her face. Has he ever asked for money? I asked. Her breath hitched. Oh no. My heart started hammering. Sophia? Did you send him money? She looked away. It wasn't like that. How much? She bit her lip. A few hundred. For travel expenses. He was supposed to come visit, but something always came up.
Jesus Christ.
I raked a hand through my hair, trying to calm myself down. This guy is a scammer, Sophia. He's not some lost soul who understands you. He's a predator. And you're exactly the kind of person he looks for. She clenched her fists. I am not stupid, Ben. No, I agreed. But you're blind right now. And if we don't do something fast, he's gonna take you for everything. For the first time, real fear crept into her expression. I grabbed the laptop and spun it back toward me. We're finding out exactly who the hell this guy is. Right now. Her voice was barely a whisper. How? I opened the Discord logs and scrolled up. Simple. He left a trail. And I'm about to follow it. I don't know what I expected when I started digging, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. Sophia sat beside me, arms crossed, chewing on her lips so hard I thought she might draw blood. She still wanted to believe in this fantasy, in him. But I was done playing nice. This wasn't some innocent emotional affair anymore. This was a con. And my wife, she was the perfect mark. I scrolled through their messages, looking for anything. An email, a username, anything that could help me figure out who this guy really was. Then I saw it. PayPal request. 2 days ago for $500. Labeled as for the flight. Baby. Can't wait to hold you. Jesus. Explain this, I said, tilting the screen toward her. Sophia's eyes darted over the words, and I could see the internal war playing out on her face. He was supposed to come visit, she whispered, but his card got frozen. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh yeah, that's a classic. The OL, my card got frozen? Can you spot me? Scam. You realize you're his paycheck, right? She flinched. Ben, it's not like that. Stop. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Just stop. You sent him money. Have you ever even heard his real name? Sophia hesitated. I groaned. Oh my God. What does he call himself? Jake, she mumbled. I snorted. Sure. Because Jake is totally a real person and not some dude running a dozen scams at once. She glared at me, but I wasn't backing down. Let's see what else he's hiding. I opened the PayPal transaction, noting the email attached to it. It was something generic, nightjake99@smail.com. Not helpful. But then I checked the payment history. There were multiple requests. $200, $350, $150, $500. My stomach dropped. Jesus, Sophia. How much have you sent this guy? She swallowed hard. I don't know. You don't know? I stared at her in disbelief. Tell me it's not more than 1,000. She didn't answer. A cold rush of realization hit me. Oh my God. It's more, isn't it? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't think about it like that. It was little amounts at a time. He needed it. I shot up from my chair, pacing the room. He needed it? For what? His pretend problems. She wiped at her face angrily. I was trying to help someone I care about. I stopped pacing, turned to her slowly. You care about him. She exhaled shakily. Ben, it's not like that. But it is, isn't it? My voice was quieter now, deadlier. You love him. She squeezed her eyes shut. I don't know. I wanted to break something. Instead, I took a deep breath and sat back down. Fine. You don't know. But you do know this guy has played you. So let's find out who he really is. I copied his email and opened a new browser tab. First, I ran it through a social media search. Nothing. Next, I tried some scammer databases. Sometimes, if a guy pulls this kind of thing enough, he'll pop up somewhere. And that's when I found it. A Reddit post from 6 months ago. Beware of Jake Knight 99. He's a scammer targeting married women on gaming platforms. I clicked it. Inside was a detailed breakdown of how this guy operated. He'd find lonely women in online games, charm them, make them feel special. He'd promise to visit, make excuses, always just a little short on cash. He'd never video chat, never send real photos. And then I saw the comments. One woman had sent him $8,000 before figuring it out. Another had divorced her husband because Jake convinced her they were meant to be. Sophia was reading over my shoulder now. I felt her tense. Recognizing anything yet? I asked bitterly. She didn't answer. I scrolled down. One comment in particular caught my attention. I found out Jake was actually a 47-year-old man from Texas who had been running this scam for years. My heart pounded. I clicked on the reply thread. Someone had done real digging. They found an old Facebook profile linked to one of his past emails. I followed the link, not breathing. The page loaded. And there he was. Not some young, attractive guy. Not some lost romantic soul. But a balding, middle-aged man with a beer gut and a smug grin. Sophia gasped. I turned to her, triumphant and furious all at once. This is your Jake. Her hand covered her mouth. No, that can't be. It is. I jabbed a finger at the screen. You were about to throw everything away for this guy. For this lying piece of garbage. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know. I let out a cold laugh. Of course you didn't. Because he made sure you wouldn't. But guess what? Now you do. She crumbled, head in her hands, sobbing. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't reach out to comfort her. I just sat back, watching, as the fantasy shattered around her. Sophia sobbed into her hands, shoulders shaking like her whole world had just caved in. I should have felt bad. I didn't, not even a little, because while she was mourning some imaginary relationship with a con artist, I was sitting there trying to process the fact that my wife, the woman I built a life with, had been sneaking behind my back, whispering sweet nothings to some lowlife while draining our bank account. And now she wanted pity? I leaned back, arms crossed. So? What now? Sophia's head snapped up. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. What now? She repeated, her voice raw. Yeah. What are you gonna do about this, Sophia? She opened her mouth, closed it again. Because let's be clear, I continued, voice cold. This isn't just some oops, my bad situation. You got played, and you let it happen. So what are you gonna do about it? She swallowed hard. I don't know. I let out a humorless laugh. Jesus Christ. She sat there, staring at her lap like a scolded kid. I wasn't letting her off that easy. I pulled up our bank account and turned the screen toward her. Tell me exactly how much you sent him. She flinched. Ben, please, How much? A tear slipped down her cheek. It's a little over $3,000. I saw red. $3,000. My voice came out louder than I intended. Are you kidding me, Sophia? I didn't send it all at once, she stammered. It was little amounts, spread out over months. Oh, well, in that case, totally fine. I snapped. Who cares if you sent some random stranger the equivalent of a used car, as long as it was in little pieces? Great financial planning. She winced. I thought he needed it. I scoffed. For what? The guy lives in Texas, Sophia. You don't even know if his real name is Jake. Her whole body shook. I thought he loved me. Something inside me snapped. Love you? I barked out a laugh. He doesn't even know you. He's probably running the exact same script on a dozen women right now. She sucked in a shaky breath. I didn't mean for this to happen. I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhaling sharply. That I believe. But you let it happen, Sophia. And it almost went further. Her face twisted in pain. But it didn't. I leaned in, voice low. Would it have, though? If I hadn't caught you? If this creep had actually gotten on a plane? Would you have met him? Silence. I nodded. That's what I thought. Her lip trembled. I was lonely, Ben. I stared at her, stunned. Oh, so this is my fault now? That's not what No, go ahead. Enlighten me. I threw my hands up. Please explain how me trusting you while you ran around behind my back makes me the problem. Tears kept coming, but I wasn't feeling generous. Jesus, Sophia. I work long hours. I make sure we have a good life. And while I'm busting my ass, you're what? Playing medieval love simulator with some scammer? She buried her face in her hands. I was stupid, okay? I know that now. I stared at her, disgusted. What do we do? She whispered. Like this was our problem. Like I had any responsibility to fix her mess. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. Step 1. Cut off the money flow. I pulled the laptop back and logged into her PayPal, my jaw clenching as I saw another pending payment. $250, scheduled to go out tomorrow. I canceled it on the spot. Sophia's head snapped up. Wait, what? I glared at her. You knew that was scheduled, didn't you? Her silence was answer enough. I shook my head in disgust. Jesus Christ, Sophia. I changed her PayPal password and unlinked her bank account. She didn't protest. Step 2. Make sure this guy never contacts her again. I opened her Discord, found Jake, and clicked on his profile. Guess what? His name had changed. No more Rogue Knight 99. Now he was Shadowblade 77. My stomach turned. This guy was already moving on, already setting up new victims. I copied his new username, my brain shifting gears. I needed to do more than block him. I needed to wreck him. Without a word, I got up and walked to the office. Ben. Sophia called weakly. I ignored her. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started typing. Step 3, ruin his life. If this guy wanted to play games, fine. Play back. I found the Reddit post where people had been tracking him. I added everything I had, his new username, the email Sophia had sent money to, the fact that he had convinced my wife to send him thousands. Then I hit up a tech-savvy buddy of mine. I sent him everything. Find me everything on this guy. I typed. I want his real name, his real location, whatever dirt you can dig up. And I want it tonight. His reply came back almost instantly. On it. I shut the laptop, breathing hard. I wasn't just gonna block this guy. I was gonna make sure he never scammed anyone again. And as for Sophia, I wasn't sure what came next. But I did know one thing. She wasn't the person I thought she was. And I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind went into overdrive, replaying everything Sophia had said, everything I'd found, every dollar she'd thrown away on this scam artist. Meanwhile, she was curled up in bed like she had just survived a tragedy, like she was the victim here. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all crushing me. She'd chosen this. She had chosen him, this faceless, nameless nothing, over me. And if I hadn't caught her, how much further would it have gone? Would she have drained our savings? Packed a bag one day and left? Would she have slept with him if he actually showed up? The thought made my blood boil. I finally gave up on sleep around 5 a.m. When I got out of bed, Sophia stirred.
Ben.
Her voice was soft, hoarse. I ignored her. I made my way to the kitchen, fired up the coffee maker, and grabbed my phone. I had a message from my friend, Nate, the guy I'd sent all of Jake's info to. Got something. Call me. I stepped outside onto the porch, the cold morning air helping clear my head. I hit call and he picked up immediately. Dude, Nate said, his voice still groggy. I don't know what kind of rabbit hole you sent me down, but this guy, he's bad news. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Define bad news. There was a pause. Then, his real name is Anthony Dawson, 49 years old. Been arrested twice for wire fraud and online scams. No convictions, but the guy's been at this for years. I clenched my jaw. How much has he taken from people? Hard to say. I found old forum posts from 10 years ago talking about this guy running similar scams. Some women were wiped out completely, man. One woman even lost her house because of him. Jesus. And get this, Nate continued. He's not just scamming women. He's laundering money too. My stomach twisted. You serious? Yeah. Some of the PayPal accounts linked to his name have been flagged before. He moves money between different accounts, probably selling stolen goods or running fake investments. Your wife, she wasn't just getting played. She was funding whatever illegal crap he's involved in. My grip on the phone tightened. Can we take him down? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Nate exhaled. I can report him to some online fraud groups, flag his accounts, get people watching him. But if you want real action, you need to get law enforcement involved. I nodded to myself. Good. Do it. Report everything. You sure? Sophia might have to give a statement. I don't care, I snapped. She should give a statement. Maybe then she'll finally understand how deep she got in this mess. Another pause. You all right, man? I laughed bitterly. Do I sound all right? No, he admitted. You sound like a guy deciding whether or not to torch his whole marriage. I ran a hand over my face. Yeah, maybe I am. We hung up. I stood there, staring out at the street, heart hammering. Then I turned and walked back inside. Sophia was sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a mug of coffee like it was her lifeline. She looked up at me, eyes puffy from crying. Ben, please, can we talk? I sat across from her. Okay, I said. Let's talk. She swallowed hard. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need you to understand, I wasn't thinking. I never meant to betray you. Stop. I cut her off. I don't want to hear excuses. I want you to answer something for me. She nodded hesitantly. I leaned in. If I hadn't caught you, would you still be sending him money? She flinched. I waited. And then the silence gave me my answer. I sat back, laughing bitterly.
Jesus, Sophia.
I don't know, she burst out. I thought I loved him. Okay? I thought he cared about me. But I see it now, Ben. I see what he was doing. I know I was stupid. I just... She broke down again, shaking, gasping for air. And for the first time since this started, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity, just nothing. You didn't just betray me, Sophia, I said quietly. You betrayed yourself. She looked up, desperate. Ben, please. You were willing to throw away everything for a guy you never met. I went on. You lied to me. You let this guy manipulate you. And you would have kept doing it if I hadn't stopped you. Her lip quivered. I don't know how to fix this. I stared at her for a long time. Then I spoke the words I never thought I'd have to say. I don't think you can. Her breath hitched.
No.
No, Ben, please don't say that. I reported him, I said, cutting her off, to fraud groups, possibly law enforcement. He's going down. Shock flickered across her face. You reported him? Of course I did. I narrowed my eyes. Did you think I'd just let him get away with it? She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Like the man sitting across from her wasn't the husband she knew. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe that version of me had died the moment I saw those messages. I stood up. I need space. She jolted up too, panic in her eyes. No, Ben, please don't. I'm not making any decisions right now, I interrupted. But I can't be around you right now. I need time. Her face crumpled. Do you still love me? That question should have been easy. It wasn't. I walked toward the door. Before I left, I gave her the most honest answer I could. I don't know. I didn't go back that night, or the next. I crashed at Nate's place, ignoring the dozens of missed calls and texts from Sophia. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a sharp pang of something. Anger, betrayal, exhaustion. But not love. That was the worst part. I didn't feel love. I had spent years believing that Sophia and I were a team, that we had something solid. But the moment I pulled back, the moment I put up a wall, I realized something gut-wrenching. Sophia only fought for what she thought she had lost. Not for me. Not for our marriage. For the fantasy she had broken. On the third night, Nate handed me a beer and sat across from me. You gotta make a decision, man, he said. You staying in this or not? I exhaled slowly. I don't know. All right, he leaned forward. Let's break it down. Are you still mad? I scoffed. Nate, I'm so mad I could spit nails. Do you still trust her? Silence. That was the real question, wasn't it? Finally, I shook my head.
No.
Nate nodded. That's a problem, bro. Yeah.
No kidding.
I took a sip of beer, staring blankly at the table. You still love her? My stomach twisted. I should have said yes. I wanted to say yes. But the truth? The real truth? I don't know anymore, I admitted. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just that Sophia had betrayed me. It was that she had shattered the version of her I had in my head. The woman I loved? She wasn't real. She was a version of Sophia that I thought existed. The real Sophia? She was someone who fell for a con artist. Someone who sent thousands of dollars to a stranger. Someone who only felt guilty when she got caught. And I wasn't sure I could ever love that person. Then you got your answer, Nate said. I shook my head. It's not that simple, man. 7 years. A whole life together. I can't just walk away like it was nothing. You're not walking away from nothing, Nate said. You're walking away from someone who walked away from you first. That hit like a sledgehammer. Look, he continued. I'm not saying divorce her tomorrow, but you gotta figure out if this is fixable. If it's not, don't drag it out. I sighed. Yeah, I know. The next morning I went home. When I walked in, the house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Then I saw her. Sophia was sitting on the couch, wrapped in one of my old hoodies. Her hair was a mess, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked up the second I stepped inside, like she had been holding her breath for days. Ben, she whispered. I set my keys down. We need to talk. She nodded quickly, straightening up. Yes, please. I sat across from her, keeping distance between us. I need to know the truth, I said. All of it. No more half answers, no more dodging. Just the truth. She swallowed hard. Okay. I leaned forward. When did it start? She exhaled shakily. About 6 months ago. I clenched my jaw. I had assumed 3 or 4. Not 6. Why? She looked down at her hands. I was lonely. I scoffed. Yeah, you mentioned that before. She flinched. It wasn't just that. I felt invisible. You were working late all the time, coming home exhausted, barely talking to me. I held up a hand. Don't you dare make this about me. I'm not, she said quickly. I'm just trying to explain how I felt. I forced myself to stay calm. You felt lonely. So instead of talking to me, instead of telling me you were struggling, you ran to some random guy online. She wiped at her eyes. I thought he understood me. You thought a scammer understood you? I shook my head.
Jesus, Sofia.
I didn't know he was a scammer, she snapped. But you knew it was wrong. I fired back. You knew, or else you wouldn't have hid it. Silence. I let out a slow breath, rubbing my temples. Did you ever plan to meet him? She hesitated. Then, finally, yes. My stomach dropped. I leaned back, staring at her like I was seeing a stranger. Unbelievable. She reached for me, but I pulled away.
Ben.
You were really gonna do it? I said, laughing bitterly. You were actually gonna go through with it. She shook her head furiously.
No.
I mean, I thought about it, but I never would have actually gone. I didn't believe her, not even for a second, because I had seen what she wrote. One day this will be real. She wanted it. She had been waiting for it. And if that bastard had actually shown up, if he hadn't been a scammer, if he had been some real guy playing the same game, she would have met him. She would have cheated. I stood up. Sophia's breath hitched.
Ben.
I looked down at her, at this broken, shaking version of my wife, and I realized something. This wasn't my burden to carry anymore. She had done this. She had chosen this. And I wasn't gonna let her guilt keep me in this mess. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said quietly. Her face crumpled. Ben, please. I need time, I said, cutting her off. I need to figure out if I can even look at you the same way again. She sobbed. I love you. I turned toward the door. Yeah? Then why wasn't that enough? And with that I walked out. I didn't go back. Not that night. Not the next. Not even after Sophia's texts turned from desperate pleas to silent acceptance. She knew she had lost me, and I knew I had lost us. I spent the next few days at a hotel, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. The anger was still there, burning under my skin like an open wound. But now it was laced with something worse, emptiness. What was left when the anger ran out? What was left when the person you trusted most shattered everything? I had no answers. Then, on the 5th day, Nate called. Ben, he said, voice tight. You need to come over. Now. My stomach clenched. What happened? It's about your boy Jake, he said grimly. Or should I say Anthony Dawson? I grabbed my keys. I'm on my way. When I got to Nate's place, he had his laptop open. A document pulled up on the screen. Remember how I told you this guy was bad news? He said. Turns out, I underestimated how bad. I leaned over his shoulder. What am I looking at? Police reports, Nate said. Not just for fraud. There's more. Way more. I scanned the text, my blood turning ice cold. Extortion. Blackmail. Threats. This guy wasn't just scamming women, he was destroying them. He'd get close, get money, get leverage. Then, when they finally wised up, he'd threaten to tell their families, their husbands, their jobs. Some women had gone bankrupt trying to buy his silence. Others had lost their marriages, their reputations. And one had gone missing. I straightened up.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Nate muttered. This guy isn't just some loser running a side hustle. He's a predator. My mind was spinning. You think he would have tried to blackmail Sophia? Eventually? Yeah. Nate scrolled down. All the patterns match. He starts off sweet, gets them invested, then drops something. A request for a risky photo, a confession about their marriage that he can use later. He collects dirt. My stomach twisted. Sophia hadn't just been played. She had been hunted. I swallowed hard. Does he know I'm onto him? Nate shook his head. Not yet, but he will soon. The fraud groups are spreading his info fast, and once law enforcement flags him, he's gonna run. I nodded slowly. Then we need to move first. I drove home. For the first time in days, I wasn't confused. I wasn't drowning in my own anger. I wasn't lost in what-ifs and regrets. I knew what I had to do. Sophia was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, looking like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, she jumped up, eyes brimming with hope.
Ben.
I held up a hand. Sit down. She obeyed instantly. I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, and slid it toward her. Read. She hesitated, then picked it up. Her eyes moved over the text. Then again. Then her breath hitched. Her hands started to shake. Blackmail? She whispered. Extortion. She looked up at me, horror on her face. He wouldn't. He would, I said flatly. He does. He's done it before, and he would have done it to you. Her lip trembled. Oh my God. Yeah, I said bitterly. Oh my God. She put a hand over her mouth. I was so stupid. I didn't argue. I watched her crumble, watched the full weight of her stupidity finally crash down on her. And as much as I wanted to stay angry, as much as I wanted to throw it all back in her face, couldn't. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, Sophia wasn't crying for herself. She was crying because she had endangered us. She had nearly ruined everything. And she knew it. I'll talk to the police, she whispered. I'll do whatever it takes to help take him down. I nodded. Good. She wiped at her face, her whole body shaking. Can we fix us? That was the real question, wasn't it? Could I ever look at her the same way again? Could I ever trust her again? Could I ever love her again? I exhaled slowly. I don't know. She let out a broken sob. But for once, I didn't comfort her. For once, I let her feel it. Because this was her mess. And for the first time, she understood that. Sophia gave her statement to the police. She was humiliated, but I didn't comfort her. She had to face what she had done. The detective told us we were lucky. Most victims didn't get out before losing everything. Thanks to Sophia's information, they were building a case against Anthony Dawson, and if all went well, he'd be arrested soon. That was one problem handled. The other problem? That night, Sophia stood in the doorway, eyes red from crying. Are we done? She whispered. I didn't look at her. I don't know. I love you, she choked out. I scoffed. Love didn't stop you, Sophia. She crumbled, sobbing. I was stupid. I can fix this. I sighed. We have to fix it. And I don't know if I want to. Silence. Then, finally, the question I had been dreading. Do you still love me? I opened my mouth. Stopped. The woman I loved? She wasn't real. I stood up. I need time. However long you need, she whispered. Just don't leave me. I looked at her for a long moment. And deep down, I already knew. I had left. I just hadn't said it yet. I turned and walked away. Sophia stayed where she was, crying softly in the dark.